Alright everybody, so on this little video I'm going to show you how to put a CPO on, a control panel overlay, and that's what this is right here. It's a control panel artwork or an overlay. Alright, I've already gone through and sanded off the original artwork, as you can see. This has been spray painted right here because unfortunately I bought this CPO about 2 years ago, roughly. Never tested it out, and come to find out, it's not the proper length. I've already lined it all up, as you can see. I got the clamps on, so like start button holes in the right spot, and these holes are in the right spot as well. Even though they have covers, I want them to be lined up as best as I can. So I had to paint this control panel in order to make this kind of work out a little bit. I did discuss this with the owner of the game and told them what's going on, and they're okay with it. If they were not okay with it, then they would have had to wait probably like almost 3 months for a different control panel overlay from a different company. They're cool with this. They have no reason or want to sell the game. They just want it so that it looks decent and they can play it in their own home. So this is what it is. Alright, it's not perfect, it's not ideal, I don't even like it, but it is what it is. But either way, I've already lined everything up, without filming it and stuff. It's just a bunch of nitty-gritty turning and twisting and moving and sliding the CPO around so you get everything lined up the way you want it to be lined up, and make sure it's nice and square and level and straight, of course. Clamp it down and so on. Now normally when I do any kind of artwork, I'll go from the center to the right or the center to the left first. But since this control panel, as you can see, has a curve going down like this, right? That's going to make it a little more difficult, because if I do that, then I'm going to have parts over here that are going to be sticking up that may cause more air bubbles than I want them to be. We don't want any air bubbles at all. We may get a few, but the goal is not to get any. So what I'm going to be doing is the halfway in the more narrow direction rather than the longer direction. So I'll strip out the backing here and cut it this direction, and then we're going to push it down this way, take the clamps off, and go the opposite direction. Then from there we'll trim it up so it's as square as it can possibly be. Okay? Again, this is not the perfect example on how to do this, but it's the way that works for me personally. You can use a few products out there like Rap Attack and so on that helps give you like a more bubble-free effect with very little work. This method, you got to be more careful and got to work a little bit more to make sure you get the air bubbles out. I just don't like the wet method. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a personal preference. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to peel back this artwork. Just like so. We're going to take our razor knife with a nice sharp blade, and we're just going to slice it right across. Sort of right across. Doesn't seem to want to work perfectly for me right now. Need something to weight down the artwork a little bit so it doesn't flap back up on me. That's not ideal, but it just works. Okay. So now that we got that set up, we're going to hold it from the middle in my method, And then we're going to use our little squeegee piece here with felt on the end, as you can see, and very gently bring this down, like so. We're just going to kind of do one of these numbers. You only want to do a little bit at a time. You don't want to do a lot. Because you do too much at a time, then you're going to increase your likelihood of getting an air bubble in there. And again, we don't want any air bubbles. We want to minimize that. Now that we're at their edge, we're going to very carefully kind of roll this over. Just like so, all the way down to the end. On both sides and both directions. And there we go. And then we're going to do a few passes just to make sure. And as you're doing these few little passes, you want to make sure you're looking at it kind of at an angle just to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles. And the lighting that you have is going to help you with that, okay? Plus, this whole little back and forth motion creates a little bit of heat, so the adhesive on the CPO is going to actually stick to your metal control panel or your wooden side panels or anything that you're putting your artwork on just a little bit better. Now, I also want to mention, the only reason why I didn't show you me stripping the old control panel, to be honest with you, there was nothing left of it. It was so worn out, rusted up, and beat up, there was virtually no art left. And all I did was take my drill gun with a wire wheel on it, because it was not a CPO like this. It was actually stenciled on. So it needed to be sanded off or wire wheeled off. And I used this wire wheel, and I just took off whatever was left. It took me maybe 5 minutes to get the whole thing done because there was almost no artwork left at all. Alright? I had to look up images just to make sure that I had the proper artwork and I was going to line this up properly. Okay? So now that we got half of it done, we're going to go ahead and remove our little clamps at this time on our sides because we don't need them anymore. The adhesive on there has held it in place quite well. So, at this point, what we're going to do is we'll just flip it around just to make it easier for myself and, of course, easier for you guys to kind of see what I'm doing here. I know the camera angle's not perfect, but at least you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. So we'll flip this up and remove the last bit of backing to it, okay? Just like so. Put that down to the side. Same as the other side. Hold it right in the middle, okay? And then you're going to take our little squeegee, and we're going to very carefully, little by little, while keeping it as taut as we can, push this bad boy down until we get all the way to the edge. And when we get all the way to the edge, we're going to do just like we did in the first part. And we're going to make sure that everything is adhered nicely by pushing the squeegee into it a little bit more firmly. And we're going to go over everything that we did so that the heat that's generated from us doing this will allow the adhesive below to kind of loosen up a little bit more, become a little more tacky and sticky, so it really holds on to that control panel very, very well. Because we don't want this thing to bubble up later on, we don't want it to peel off in any way, shape, or form. Just like so, okay? Now I like to fold this a little bit like you can see. The reason why I fold this is because we got a tight edge here. And that doesn't mean I'm going to cut on that line. Sometimes what you can do is take it and actually fold it all the way over. So you got a nice perfect seam. This is nothing wrong with doing something like this, okay? But it doesn't mean it's going to work every time. So you got to be prepared for it not to work. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to trim it. You won't have a choice at that point. I just like to keep the seam nice and tight as I move this over. Sometimes you gotta do a little bit of readjustment, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. You know, this is just part of it. You gotta be patient, take your time, and do your best to make sure everything is as tight as it can possibly be. Because that's gonna give you your better results, especially at the end when people are using the control panel. Not only from just playing it, but from also opening and closing it on the game itself. Because over time, while you open and close the control panel, do any kind of servicing and stuff, if the CPO is not adhered very properly, then it's going to start bubbling up or popping off, and you're going to have some really upset customers on your hands. You really are. I've had it happen before. You know, while I was personally learning the best methods for myself to use, and the only thing I can really say is just do what you can. Okay? Do the best you can. Try it, learn, make mistakes, and so on. It's the only way to do it. As you can see, it actually kind of turned out quite nice for me. Nice smooth edge right here. So that'll hold down quite nicely, actually. I have no air bubbles that I can see, at least. Then we flip it around. You can see a little bit of a line, but it's not that bad. Okay? So I'm not going to be complaining about that. What we need to do next, though, is start to trim up our side excess here. The side excess. And we got to trim these two holes out, and then the start button hole right here. The best way to do that is just like before, make sure you have a nice sharp razor blade. And sometimes, depending on how much you're trimming, you need to actually replace your razor blade partway through the trimming process. So what I like to do is get the middle of the blade right on the edge on one of the sides of the artwork, and then get a cut started, and then twist in towards the control panel or your cabinet, not by much but a little bit, so your blade, the edge of the blade, is following the edge of your control panel or the edge of the cabinet that you're putting artwork on. And then we just kind of very carefully cut that piece right off. Just like so. Nice smooth line. Okay, so we'll throw that to the side. We don't need that no more. We'll flip the panel over. We'll do the other side now. Same thing, but I'm going to go from the opposite direction, like this. I got it started. I'm going to hold the artwork so it stays taut, and then I'm just going to follow the edge all the way down. Now, remember, you should never cut towards yourself, but I cut towards myself. I'm, I guess, crazy that way. Don't do that, not unless you want to take the risk of cutting yourself. I personally don't care. So, do as I say, not as I do. I guess that's the saying, right? Alright, so we got two nice edges. Technically three, because we got the top here. That's all nice and smooth and good to go. It's folded over, so it's going to work out great for us. Now, we need to cut out our two holes for our controllers and then our start button. And it's going to be the same, basically. Now, if you're using a standard style push button, where you push it through the top, right? For the start button, for example, you can just do like a cross cut. You just need to like cut in 2 different directions so you have 4 triangles, and that push button will just push it right through, no issues whatsoever. But these are volcano buttons. The threads come from the bottom, so if I were to do that, it would actually push the artwork up and off of the control panel. So I actually do have to cut this circle out all the way. These aren't as particular per se, but I'm still going to try and make them as close as I can. So I'm going to basically just plunge the tip in and do the same as before, except for I'm going to go around in kind of like a circle, or in this case a diamond shape. And you just want to take your time and be careful so you don't accidentally pop artwork up. Now, it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. It really doesn't, because there is a bezel that goes over this particular part of the control panel that will cover up most, if not all, of your imperfections. Alright? Now I know that's not really like the proper way I should be telling you guys to do things, but if there's something that will take over the majority of small errors you make, then screw it. Just do it, okay? Because that turned out pretty decent. Even though it's not actually perfect, you're never going to tell once it's all put back together, okay? So we got that one. Let's get this next one done. As you can tell, my razor blade's starting to get dull, so I should technically replace it, but since all I have is this little slice right here, and then that little teeny tiny hole right there, I'm not going to go and do that. Because again, there are bezels that cover these up, and the volcano button that goes here, there's, the volcano topper piece that screws down. That's going to cover up any imperfections I make. The only reason why I don't want to do that whole crisscross kind of cut, where it's like an X or 4 triangles of pieces left behind, is like I said, the threads push through the bottom, so it'll push up on the artwork, causing more air bubbles or any other issues that I really don't want. So all I do is I like to push down where it's at, so I get a general line, I guess you could say, of where it's supposed to be. And then I'll just try my best to very carefully and slowly cut it out of there. There we go. Alright. And that's it. That's how you install a CPO in a very quick and clean manner and cut out the little bit of features, okay? Now again, every CPO is going to be slightly different, and every side art is going to be slightly different. Sometimes you're going to have to be a little more anal about things, like you're going to have to be replacing your razor blades more often than I did. You're going to have to be careful about exact alignments of things. This is a little more forgiving, so it's kind of like an easier way to kind of give you an example about how to do this. There's no other holes in this control panel that need to be cut out. It's just a start button. Then we got our 2 joysticks here that control our tank. This is for Battlezone, so there's not much to it. It's very basic, very simple. Again, if the customer wanted me to get a different CPO because of the whole fact it didn't cover the whole entire thing, I would have, but they would have had to wait a while most likely to have a new one made. Maybe I could have found one that was working or that was the proper size right away, but I don't know. But they're okay with this, and if you're okay with that, there's nothing wrong with it. It's going to be fine. It really is, because from the naked eye, it's going to be really hard to see. The camera angle with the lighting and stuff makes it much easier to see, as you can kind of see. But ultimately, it turned out fine. I like it. I'm sure the customer's going to like it. And it's definitely a million times better than it was before, where there was virtually no artwork at all. The only artwork that was left was kind of a little bit of this blue around here. Everything else was completely gone. So, screw it. This is good enough, okay? Alright. Well, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm hoping on the next video, or within the next couple videos, we're going to be repopulating this control panel. We'll show you how to put the joysticks and the volcano button back into it. And then we're going to be doing site art on the Battlezone soon. So keep looking forward for that video. Other than that, thank you again so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a wonderful time. And just keep gaming on. Keep trying some new stuff, and you know what? Let me know your method of putting on artwork. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the liquid method is way more superior. I personally don't like it, but y'all might have a different opinion. So, we'll talk with you later. Have a great night. See you next time.